Welcome to Live the Dream with yours truly, Marty Kaiser. Buckle up and let's get started. Happy Tuesday, everyone. This is our Tuesday episode of Real Estate Tidbits. Hope everyone is having a great start of the week. It's hotter than heck outside, so we're getting into the Florida summer between hot weather, humid weather, bugs, and rain. Other than that, it's great weather. So anyway, I'm going to go over a couple things today. And we're going to be more oriented on the real estate side, and we are a real estate show, but sometimes I include some other things along with it. But we're going to focus more on real estate today, and we'll end up with just a short thing on the NBA championship playoffs. So what I wanted to go over today was how do people react in the real estate industry to unusual conditions, challenges, and what about the ethics of realtors and their professionalism? And the reason I'm covering these topics is for a few reasons. For those of you that have been loyal listeners, we're going on our year anniversary soon. When we started off our podcast last summer, basically we were in the midst of these regulatory changes to do with the class action lawsuit settlement, and that the realtors had to adopt a little different way to do business in terms of basically contractual paperwork. When a buyer hires a realtor, that the realtor would be representing them, and it would be a contractual commitment, just like when you list a home with a realtor. And then also we were constrained from putting compensation in listings. So the MLS, which we used to be allowed to offer compensation, we're no longer allowed to do that. And then, of course, if you've heard my most recent podcast for the last month or so, we're in a transition period where the roles have kind of switched over the past 10 to 15 years. For the past 10 to 15 years, we were in a high, proactive seller's market. So sellers had big advantages and prices were steadily increasing. Some years, the increases were okay. Other years, they were astronomical. And then we peaked out in 2022 and 23. So starting about a year ago, give or take, continuing to now, we've transitioned. And now the buyers have a much better track to negotiate with. And it's become increasingly noticeable over the past 6 or 8 weeks. Inventory has increased significantly, and buyer activity is very competitive. So buyers have more options, and they're carefully mulling over their options, because not only are there more real estate options, but then they're also doing more analysis when they look at a house of how much, if any, money do I have to put into the house to make it meet my specifications? What payment am I comfortable with now that interest rates have doubled over the past few years? And then some of the secondary issues they look at are, how high are the HOA fees? If it's not a homestead property, what are the property taxes? So there's a lot of financial information for the buyers to digest. So it's created more information to be shared with the buyers and more deep-seated analysis with the buyers. And hopefully they're relying on their real estate agent to give them excellent counsel and a lot of facts. And of course, that goes along with, they have a contract with that agent. So they've pretty much committed to a finite period of time, let's say 3 months, let's say 6 months, whatever the agreement is, that if they buy a property during that time, regardless of anything else, their agent has to be compensated. So for the majority of times, the seller is still willing to compensate, but obviously the commissions offered can vary. And there's limited cases where under the new guidelines, there's been a handful of sellers I've run into that are not compensating realtors when the realtor would write an offer on their property. So in those situations, if your buyer wants to move forward with that property, The buyer has to compensate their buyer's agent. So that's another item that the buyer has to factor into the negotiations is how much are they paying their agent for his professionalism and assistance? And then how's that going to affect the type of offer they're writing? So there's just a lot more to it. And then, of course, when you get into a situation where the sellers have some time constraints, maybe they're relocating for a job, maybe they're moving because they have elderly parents that need more of their attention, or maybe they're buying a new home and the deal with the new home builder is not contingent on selling their home, which frequently builders don't give contingencies. So in those situations, the buyer has a lot more pressure, and that's going to affect their strategy in terms of what their end price is going to be. There's just a lot more to it. So it's important that all these items be addressed at the beginning of the process and a detailed plan of action be in place. And as you may have read in some of these articles over the years, the majority of agents in Florida do not make a very great living. I think the last statistic I read was like 85 or 90% of the agents in the Florida market didn't have any transactions in 2024. So it's amazing how many people are licensed, but a lot of them don't do much of any business, and that also accounts for people that are part-time or people that go with real estate offices that just want to hire in bulk but don't do sufficient training. So there's just a lot of reasons why the income and transaction level varies so much. And you can imagine for agents that this is their only job and they're not making that much money and they're not doing that many transactions, there's a lot of pressure. And real estate's always been an industry where the ethics, even though we have a detailed code of ethics in real estate, I can just tell you from my personal experience of 30 plus years in the industry, that ethics vary quite a bit between agents. Some agents are very ethical, very professional, very skilled at what they do. Other agents are not so skilled, they're not professional. Their ethical standards are questionable, to put it politely. And the reason I bring up ethics is on a personal situation that I've encountered recently. I'm pretty well known in the south part of Orlando, especially in the Hunters Creek area. I've been fortunate enough for a number of years to do more transactions than anybody else in Hunters Creek. And so not only am I known by Hunters Creek residents, hopefully for the great job that I've done with them, but also for realtors that I compete with in this market, because if you go through and look at the statistics are what they are. So the amount of transactions that I claim to have done, I've done. And so periodically I'll go on an appointment and, like a lot of sellers, they may have interviewed 2 or 3 agents in addition to myself, and they'll usually share that with me, and I certainly don't fault them for that. It's always good to get some varying opinions. Not only are you going to get varying opinions possibly on pricing strategy, but you might get varying opinions on the best way to market the home, if the home needs any work before it goes to market, what are the pros and cons of that individual property, how's the market overall in Hunters Creek or whatever area we're chatting about, what are the trends, what is the absorption rate in that neighborhood, meaning that how's the relationship between what's for sale and what's sold. In other words, is it an area where there's a lot for sale and not that many sold? Because you would approach that area differently than an area that's got little for sale and a lot of sales. So there's a lot more to it. So keeping that as a backdrop, I've received 2 listings recently that were both in Hunters Creek. And it just so happened on both listings, after the people had said, we're going to utilize your services, Marty, we feel 100% comfortable with you, we know your background, and et cetera. They volunteer that they had talked with a couple different agents, and in both cases, they happened to mention one agent by name. And so the agent they referenced, I knew of. It's somebody that's been in the business for quite a while. At one time, this particular agent had been at a company that I had worked with, which I left about 12 years ago. And so periodically I've run into her on different transactions. But, over the years, she doesn't do the volume of business that I do. And she has a much different personality and way that she conducts business. So I'm not going to mention A, the name of the person, and B, the differences with how we conduct business. But the reason that I bring that up is this agent went out of her way with both customers to greatly disparage me, saying some pretty, not only untruthful things, but pretty negative stuff about me. And telling them that they'd be making a mistake using me, why they should use her, et cetera, et cetera. And it was interesting because both of these customers went out of their way to notify me of this. And, my response to them was, that's disappointing, that it's very unprofessional, but I'm not surprised by that particular agent because her reputation is, let's say, not that sterling with other folks that I know in the real estate industry. But the biggest thing is when you have to denigrate a competitor instead of extolling your virtues, it shows that you don't really have much to say in terms of why a person should hire you. And in most cases, it's very counterproductive because if that customer was considering using you, they're probably less likely to do so. Because I think most people do not think it's a good thing to be criticizing your competition in a very negative manner. From my point of view, the things that were relayed to me were very defaming and slanderous. And I guess if it continues, I may be forced to contacting her broker, letting the broker know of what's going on. And if worse comes to worse, I have no problem retaining a lawyer and, bringing defamation and slander suit. I don't really want to do that because it's aggravating and I don't need the money. But on the other hand, you can only turn your cheek so much because if you turn your cheek, you're almost condoning that behavior. It's just like, and I always compare things to politics, but our political system, especially certain people involved in politics, continually lie. I mean, they say blatant lies that can be easily refuted. But there's a lot of people in our population, because they don't do their own fact checking, if they hear a lie long enough, they believe it's the truth. And that's a sad thing, but unfortunately, if you tell a lie long enough and you tell it convincingly enough, there's going to be a percentage of people that believe in that. And I think we as a society, we really have a purpose that we can't allow that, because our societal standards in my lifetime have gone way down. The things that we overlook now are just disappointing. And bad behavior is sometimes rewarded more so than others. And people get away with a lot of things that they never would have gotten away with 10 or 15 years ago. So my point to consumers, if you're interviewing different agents, obviously get a lot of information shared. But if you happen to run into an agent that criticizes or denigrates one of the other agents that you're interviewing, that should be a total red flag for you, that you should immediately eliminate the agent that's saying those negative comments, because since they're not able to tell you why they do a great job for you, they're telling you they don't really have much to offer you. So anyway, that's what I wanted to bring up about ethics. And that's kind of why when we had this class action lawsuit, the real estate industry is not looked on that favorably by a lot of the general public because of some ethical things. Anytime you're in a commission industry, some people get really desperate to generate income, and they'll do anything to make a quick buck, and that's unfortunate. But enough about that for today. Last but not least, the NBA championships are in full throttle now. Indiana pulled a major upset in Game 1 against Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City came back in Game 2 and won decisively. And I believe Game 3 is tomorrow. As I mentioned when we started talking a few weeks ago about the upcoming championship series, I thought it would be a great series. I still feel that the team that I selected at the beginning, Oklahoma City, is going to be victorious because I think they're just a better team. But I did pick them to win in 5 games. So I may be wrong about that because right now it's 1-1. And in order for it to end in 5 games, Oklahoma City has to win the last 3. So we'll see how they do. Last but not least, and I have to mention this, I've been a tennis player for years. And they had the French Open tournament this past weekend. Carlos Alcaraz beat Yannick Sinner in a tremendously played 5-set match. They were the number 1 and 2 seeds in the tournament. This is one of the tennis majors, so 4 of the tournaments are a big deal in tennis. Sinner was winning 2-1. He had a 5-3 lead in what they call triple break point. And between Alcaraz raising his game and Sinner kind of getting nervous, Alcaraz came back and won a 5th-set tiebreaker. So it was very exciting. The quality of play was just, in my opinion, phenomenal. These later-day players, it's incredible how hard they hit the ball and how accurate they are and how agile they are. And I think athletics evolves in most of the sports, but I think these 2 players in particular are going to dominate tennis for the foreseeable future. So that's all for today. Have a great rest of the week. Oh, before I forget, we're going to be putting a few new properties on the market. We've got a 5-bedroom, 3-bath, 3.5-bath pool home in the Mar Vista section of Hunters Creek, corner lot, very well maintained, $675. We've got a home in Keaton's Crest that it's tremendous value. It's a 2,700-foot home. It's a 4 or 5-bedroom, 3-bath, all on one level, nice pool, well maintained. It's priced at an extremely value-oriented price of $639,903. The sellers are offering $5,000 in closing expenses on an accepted contract. We're going to be putting up 2 new condominiums, one in Hunters Creek and one in an area that's right near the Meadowwoods area, both nice properties. The one in Villanova should be $269,000. It's a 1-story, 3-bedroom, 2-bath with a 1-car garage, very well maintained. And the other one in Meadowwoods, I should have the price for you on Friday. We've also got a couple rental properties we just put on the market, one in Hunters Creek and one in Peppermill. So if we can help you with any of these properties, feel free to call me, Marty Kaiser, 407-595-9700. Everybody have a great week. This is Marty Kaiser out.